Well, it's awful hard for me to see myself preaching to you about how wonderful a shepherd we have standing behind a whole bunch of wood. I love Fred Craddock Solani. He always says they take whatever construction materials they have when they build a church and pile it up front and call it a pulpit. And we do kind of get that, but we have a shepherd and we have such beautiful music and reminders of God's peace. It just seems fitting that I'm down here with y'all, just a little closer. There was a time in life, some of us may recall, when the phone rang and you didn't know who was on the other end. Much less did your phone tell you who it was calling, or if it was spam, or even what area code it was from. Every call that came through sounded just like the other. And it was a real bell in a lot of the phones, not some synthesized electronic bell. It was a real bell somehow and I never have taken a phone apart. Bob, I don't want to know how this works, but you probably have. But you know, I should probably go to like Habitat and find one of the old phones and take it apart just to see how it works. Maybe there's a YouTube video for it. But there was a time when every phone call that rang sounded the same. And you didn't know until you picked it up who it might be on the other end of the phone. And yet at the same time, once the person said hello, oftentimes you would know exactly who it was. A family member, a friend, a loved one, or somebody you had never heard of. We still had telemarketers back then, way back then, too. But to know the sound of the person that's on the other end of the line that you can't even see, it sounds fitting for this passage of Scripture, the very idea of the shepherd, of the good shepherd, of the sheep being able to recognize his voice, follow his direction and command to go where his voice calls them. The good shepherd. I love one of the hidden gems of College Place is the Good Shepherd window that hides in the stairwell as you go down this hall in the old section. When you look up, and depending on the morning sun, it looks beautiful. There are days that oftentimes when I go through the building, I kind of wander through the building just to see what changes. We have a 100-plus-year-old building. Things change. When you turn the heat on, the pipes leak. When you turn the air conditioning on, some pipes might leak. When it rains in weird places, then you know that there's a leak. It's welcome to College Place. It's all part of the fun. So I kind of take a wander through the building from time to time, and oftentimes I'll head up that stairwell and come across if I'm going over to make sure the computers are off or that the doors are closed or something like that, and I get to look straight on to that Good Shepherd window in the hallway. Jesus is there. You've seen it. Even if you haven't seen that one, you've seen one but like it in some church over the years. Jesus is sitting there holding a little lamb, looking down at it. The thing I love about stained glass is that it sets our minds right to be able to ponder and to look at something in a different way. I mean, the stained glass, I always say, was the early churches or the middle-aged church chartlet. They told stories, the ark, the beehive, the grapes, Alpha and Omega. You could see these things in those windows and you would know what they meant, even if you couldn't read about them. But Jesus standing there holding that little lamb in the hallway window, when I look down at that, I see, well, there are days I see. Well, it just depends on how I'm feeling sometimes. I think Jesus is looking at that poor little sheep like Jesus sometimes looks at me and says, "Oh, mercy, you've done it again. Can't you get your act together? I can't believe you're doing that over and over again. You know this doesn't end well." There's some days I hear that message. And then there are other days that I say, wow, poor Jason. You need all my love and support and forgiveness and encouragement. I know you might be tired, might be weary, but I'm here for you. Oh, the Good Shepherd, the one that provides for the sheep, the one who carries them into safe places, to offer good food and protection. You know, I don't know a lot about sheep herding. I've studied it over the years, but there are options. There are different ways that it was done in the ancient world. One that might be fitting today would be that Jesus is the gate. There would be some kind of holding pen, especially at night, to keep animals around. The sheep would be herded into those holding pens, and oftentimes the shepherd, instead of just being there, sitting there, like looking, would actually sleep across the gate. Like perhaps this could be the gate, and the shepherd would just lay down there. The good thing is, if anything came into the sheep herd, the shepherd would be the first to know it. Or if the sheep tried to get a little raucous and go back out on a Friday night, that the shepherd knew it. They're laying on the ground, resting and yet working at the same time, to very care for the sheep in the way that only a true shepherd does. A loyal shepherd, a loving shepherd, the good shepherd. To lay in harm's way for us. I don't know, that sounds fitting for Easter, for a story of Easter, when we've just heard of Jesus' crucifixion on the cross, when the way of peace and love and hope in the world was too much for the world, when the power of forgiveness was revealed for all the world through the work on the cross, when those on earthly powers thought they had overcome his horrible teachings, put him into a tomb, rolled the stone away, and said, "That's enough of that." Jesus was resurrected. Jesus, the dead Jesus, is alive on Easter, to bring about the power of the resurrection into the world. A reminder that God's power is so strong and wonderful and capable that even death is not too big of a challenge. Jesus, the resurrected Christ, the Good Shepherd for us. We're kind of in the middle of Easter. You know, I've said over and over again, I'm glad Easter's not just one Sunday. It's too much for our brains to process at one time. It takes a while to fully reveal and understand what and how God's love is revealed to the resurrected Christ in the world for us. We need time to slow down and to listen, to hear where the Good Shepherd is saying, or to hear what the Good Shepherd is saying to us in this time and in this day. I am the Good Shepherd. Lay down my life for the sheep. I am the gate. No one who comes in without coming through the gate is a thief and a bandit. I love it. Trying to sneak in through a different way. So only Jesus is the gate to open it up for us so that we may enter in. We come in through the gate, through the front door. None of us have to go in through the side door. Not into Jesus' heart, into God's family. Come in through the front door all the time. Well, that's at least the way I've understood Jesus' love to be. I'm beginning to think I get it wrong. I really do. I think that welcoming people through the front door into God's house, into God's kingdom, into God's family is a bygone notion, it seems, in some places. I guess you saw the article this week. You've heard about it some more. This Saturday coming up, we'll disaffiliate 191, last count, churches across Western North Carolina conference. And the reason that they are disaffiliating is because this is paragraph 22553, I think it is. is they just don't want to welcome people into the church, God's people, because they choose to love someone of their same gender. That's it. That's what you have to do if you're disaffiliating. That's the reason. I just don't know. You know, throughout church history, I just have heard over and over again that part of what is happening is that God is revealing God's self to the world around us. Jesus came first to the Jewish people. To teach in the synagogue, to do battle with the religious leaders that were sought in their ways, observing in the letter of the law. And Jesus said, "Come unto me, all you who are heavy laden." Jesus went out from Jerusalem into the whole world. Jesus was resurrected, saw his disciples, was lifted up, taken up into heaven, and through the gift of the Spirit, the disciples were sent out into the whole world. The Gospel of John, part of what it's saying to us and to the world is that it's not just about those who are the Jewish faith that Jesus came for, but it's more people. Jesus is inviting us to go out into the world to share his love with them. And the arms of the church over history continue to get wider and wider and wider. Oh, in the ancient Roman church, military people couldn't be members of the church. What? That's an anathema to us. People who serve and protect the country, no, you couldn't be it in the early church. Artists couldn't be a part of the church. What? People who create wonderful art couldn't be at the church. No, they were employed by the government to make graven images of the emperors on their coins. Artists could not be a part of the church. Nope, gotta go. And yet, throughout history, there have been continued times where people have been denied admission into the church. And slowly, by slowly, the church's doors become open. Oh, for some of us, that's much too slow of an opening of a door. I mean, it's like those electric doors that they used to have down here at the old CVS before they redid them. You know, you could walk up to that thing, and it seemed like it took a week and a half for it to open. And it made a horrible grounding sound the whole time. I started to take WD-40 down there and see if I could help it. It eventually got open. Oh, it was so frustrating. I just wanted to go get what I wanted in the drugstore and leave. I had stuff to do. I didn't have to, when you got in, you had to wait for it to open that slowly to get out. I was so glad when they redid those doors. So they'd go ahead and open up. Welcome people. So people could come in, be nurtured and sustained. The doors could go ahead and open up so that people could go out into the world. That's what I understand the church is to be. The umbrella of God's love continues to be more inclusive and inviting and enveloping into the whole world. I, in my sought in the old ways thinking sometimes, does not limit what God can do. I may not be fully understanding what's going on, but because I'm not where somebody else is, that I've done, that it's going to stay the same to suit me. Nope. God's heart transforms my heart. Not my heart, my understanding transforms God's. Somewhere recently I've seen that if your understanding of God is your understanding of what God should be, and there's no kind of places in which you and God are in tension one with another, then God hasn't transformed you. You transformed God. The challenge for us through these waters of baptism that welcome, that include, that wash away sin, that invite us into God's family, they welcome us, each of us. And because of that welcome and that experience of God's love, we're called to share that same love with the whole world around us, with the same spirit that God invites us to follow. Yeah, I know. Say, preacher, have you listened to the news this week? Violence, 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 violence. Have you driven around town? People driving crazy. You know, it just, well, it makes the preacher not want to say nice things. Well, I mean, you know, there's a part of us that are called to share God's love with the world, and evidently some of us have missed that mark, have missed that calling, have missed that invitation. Violence turns into an answer, and we understand. I mean, we've got a great example of what violence in the world does to try to hinder the very work of God. Putting Jesus on the cross did not shut his way down, did not shut his love down, did not shut his peace down. It opened it up to all the world. The story we still understand and experience 2,000 years later. But part of us, because we're in on that fold of sheep that are loved by the shepherd, that the continued transformation of our heart and our lives continues to take place. We don't get everything perfect. We're not going to. We're humans. And yet at the same time, through God's grace working in our lives, we understand that God transforms our living and helps us to more reflect God in the world and how we interact one with another. Pope Francis this morning, you know, there are some good things about technology. I'm not going to fuss at all of it. And there's even some good stuff about Twitter. Pope Francis has a Twitter account, and I love to follow it up. This morning in his sermon, he wrote this, or it's posted on Twitter as a result from his sermon. It said, "Each of us is precious to Jesus. Remember that no one can take your place in the history of the church and the world. No one else can do what only you can do. So let's help each other to believe that we are loved and precious, that we are made for great things. Because of God's love residing in our hearts, caring for us, loving us, that we're called to be God's love, to spread God's love in the world around us. All glory, honor, and power be to the one who was, who is, and who is to come. Amen."